You're not tired because you've been working too hard. You're tired because somewhere inside you, you already know you're meant for more. And nothing is heavier than carrying a life you no longer believe in. The hardest prison isn't made of steel. It's made of routines that feel normal, excuses that sound reasonable, and dreams that slowly learn how to stay quiet. Most people don't wake up one morning and decide to waste their lives. It happens so gradually that they never notice it. One ordinary day becomes another. One postponed decision becomes another year. One forgotten promise to yourself becomes a completely different version of the person you once imagined becoming. The frightening part isn't that life moves quickly. It's that your comfort quietly convinces you that there's always another tomorrow. Maybe that's why this moment feels strangely personal. Because deep down, you aren't listening to these words to be entertained. You're listening because something inside you has been whispering for a long time. A quiet voice that refuses to disappear. A feeling that keeps returning whenever the room becomes silent. Whenever your phone is finally put down. Whenever everyone else falls asleep and you're left alone with your own thoughts. That voice keeps asking the same painful question. What happened to the person I was supposed to become? Most people silence that question before it becomes uncomfortable. They scroll. They laugh. They stay busy. They tell themselves life will make sense after the next paycheck, after graduation, after marriage, after the promotion, after things somehow become easier. But the strange thing about waiting for the perfect time is that perfection never arrives. Life doesn't pause while you prepare. It simply keeps moving, quietly collecting the price of every decision you avoid. There is a truth few people are willing to face. Every day your future is watching the choices your present self refuses to make. Not someday, not next year, today. Imagine standing at the edge of two completely different lives. One belongs to the person you could become if you finally respected your own potential. The other belongs to the version of you that keeps choosing comfort over growth. From where you stand, both roads look almost identical. That's the deception. Small choices rarely feel important while you're making them. They only reveal their power years later when one person is living with peace while another is wondering where all the time went. People often believe failure arrives dramatically. They picture losing everything overnight. But life is rarely that dramatic. Failure is usually silent. It hides inside harmless habits. 5 more minutes in bed. 1 more excuse. 1 more distraction. 1 more promise you'll begin tomorrow. Nothing feels dangerous in the moment. Yet those tiny decisions quietly become your identity. Before long, the person staring back in the mirror feels strangely unfamiliar, as though you've been watching someone else live your life. The tragedy isn't that people fail. The tragedy is that many never discover what they were actually capable of. Potential is a strange thing. It doesn't disappear all at once. It fades little by little every time you ignore it. Every time fear wins another argument. Every time comfort convinces you to stay exactly where you are. Every time you trade long-term fulfillment for short-term relief. Potential dies quietly, not because it lacks strength, but because it was never given a chance to breathe. Think back to when you were younger. There was probably a version of yourself that believed almost anything was possible. You imagined creating something meaningful. You believed your future would be extraordinary. You promised yourself you would never settle for an ordinary existence. You looked at successful people and thought, one day, that will be me. What changed? It wasn't your intelligence. It wasn't your talent. Life simply introduced you to disappointment. A few failures became evidence that maybe you weren't good enough. A few rejections convinced you to stop trying. Other people's opinions became louder than your own convictions. Slowly, almost without noticing, your confidence wasn't stolen. It was surrendered. And that's what makes this so heartbreaking. Because the greatest thief in your life has never been another person. It's been the voice inside your own head. That voice has incredible power. It remembers every mistake you've ever made, but conveniently forgets every obstacle you've already overcome. It reminds you of embarrassment, but rarely reminds you of courage. It magnifies uncertainty while shrinking possibility. Eventually, you begin believing that your thoughts are facts, instead of realizing they're often just fears wearing the mask of certainty. Have you noticed how easily people accept limits they never questioned? Someone says success is only for lucky people. Someone says dreams are unrealistic. Someone says you're too late, too young, too old, too inexperienced, too ordinary. After hearing those words enough times, people stop examining whether they're true. They simply build their lives around them, Invisible walls become permanent boundaries, and imaginary ceilings become unquestioned reality. But here's something remarkable. Your life is never changed the day circumstances improve. It's changed the day your standards rise. The moment you refuse to negotiate with your own excuses, everything begins shifting. Not because the world suddenly becomes easier, but because you stop asking life for permission to become who you've always known you could be. That moment is uncomfortable. It asks you to let go of the familiar version of yourself. The one who always has a reason. The one who waits. The one who doubts. The one who secretly hopes life will change without demanding change from you. Growth has never been painless. A seed doesn't become a tree by remaining comfortable underground. Steel isn't strengthened without intense heat. A diamond spends years beneath unbearable pressure before revealing its brilliance. Nature has always understood something humans constantly try to escape. Transformation demands discomfort, yet modern life has trained us to avoid discomfort at every opportunity. We seek faster results, easier paths, instant pleasure, immediate rewards. Every inconvenience feels like something to eliminate. But what if the discomfort you've been running from is actually introducing you to the strongest version of yourself? What if every challenge you've resented has quietly been asking you one question? Are you finally ready? Ready to stop living according to yesterday's fears? Ready to stop borrowing beliefs from people who abandon their own dreams? Ready to stop confusing movement with progress? Ready to become someone your future self will one day thank? Because here's the truth that almost no one wants to hear. Your life is not determined by what you wish would happen. It's determined by what you repeatedly choose when nobody is watching. And if that realization stings, good. Sometimes the pain of truth is the beginning of freedom. Because the most dangerous day in your life isn't the day you fail. It's the day you become comfortable with living far below your own potential. And if you're still listening, something inside you hasn't given up yet. That quiet voice is still there, still waiting, still believing. The question is no longer whether you have potential. The real question is, how much longer are you willing to keep it waiting? The strange thing about wasted potential is that it almost never announces itself. It doesn't arrive with alarms or warnings. It doesn't knock on your door and tell you that you're drifting away from the life you once dreamed of. Instead, it whispers. It tells you that one more day won't matter. That resting is the same as quitting. That waiting is the same as preparing. Before you realize what's happening, you become a master at convincing yourself that you're making progress while standing perfectly still. The years continue to move, but your purpose quietly remains in the same place where you left it. Look around for a moment. The world has become incredibly skilled at capturing your attention, but very poor at helping you discover yourself. Every notification promises importance. Every headline demands urgency. Every endless stream of entertainment offers another escape from the uncomfortable conversation you've been avoiding with your own soul. The more distracted you become, the less likely you are to notice the one thing quietly disappearing in the background, your time. And unlike money, opportunities, or relationships, time never asks whether you're ready before it leaves. Perhaps that's why so many people feel exhausted even when they've accomplished very little. It's not always physical work that drains the human spirit. Sometimes it's the weight of unfinished promises. The books you said you would read. The business you always wanted to build. The conversations you kept postponing. The courage you promised yourself would arrive someday. Every unkept promise leaves a small crack in your confidence. At first, you barely notice it. But eventually, those tiny fractures become the reason you stop trusting yourself. And once you stop trusting yourself, everything becomes harder. You hesitate before making decisions because your mind remembers every time you failed to follow through. You begin doubting your own words. Even your goals lose their power because deep inside, another voice quietly says, "You'll probably quit again." That voice wasn't born overnight. It was created one broken promise at a time. Not because you're weak, but because every repeated action teaches your subconscious who you believe you are. Think about that for a second. Every habit is casting a vote, not for the life you hope to have, for the identity you're becoming. Most people focus entirely on changing results while protecting the habits that created those results. They desperately want confidence without practicing courage. They want discipline without sacrificing comfort. They want success without enduring uncertainty. They pray for extraordinary lives while fiercely defending ordinary routines. Then they wonder why nothing changes. Life doesn't respond to what you admire. It responds to what you repeatedly do. There is an uncomfortable truth hidden inside every successful life. The difference between extraordinary people and ordinary people is often invisible on any single day. One person wakes up 30 minutes earlier. Another chooses to study while everyone else is distracted. Someone decides to save instead of spend. Another chooses honesty instead of approval. None of these decisions appear dramatic. In fact, they often look painfully ordinary. But ordinary actions, repeated consistently, eventually create extraordinary outcomes. Just as tiny acts of neglect slowly create regret, tiny acts of discipline quietly build a remarkable future. This is why comparison is such a dangerous illusion. You see someone's success, but you rarely witness the mornings they wanted to quit. You admire their confidence without seeing the years they spent feeling uncertain. You celebrate their victory while remaining blind to the thousands of invisible decisions that slowly shape the person they've become. Success always looks sudden to those who ignore the process. Meanwhile, many people remain trapped inside another invisible prison. The need to be understood. How many dreams have been abandoned simply because someone else left? How many opportunities disappeared because approval became more valuable than purpose? It's astonishing how often people allow strangers, relatives, co-workers, or friends to decide the size of a life they themselves must live. The opinions that hurt the most usually come from people who have quietly accepted limitations in their own lives. Misery has a habit of recruiting company, not because those people hate you, but because your courage forces them to confront the dreams they abandoned. The moment you begin changing, something unexpected happens. The people around you may become uncomfortable. Not everyone will celebrate your growth. Some will question your decisions. Others will call you unrealistic. A few might even accuse you of changing. They're right. You are changing. And that is exactly the point. Growth will always feel like betrayal to people who benefited from your fear. Remember this carefully. The strongest tree in the forest doesn't ask the smaller trees whether it's allowed to keep growing. It simply reaches toward the sunlight because that is what it was created to do. Human beings are no different. You were not given imagination so you could spend your entire life suppressing it. You were not given gifts merely to compare them with someone else's. You were not given another sunrise simply to repeat yesterday. You were given another day because possibility still exists. Yet possibility alone changes nothing. Every cemetery is filled with possibility that was never pursued. Ideas that remain trapped inside notebooks. Songs that were never written. Businesses that never opened. Apologies that never came. Love that was never expressed. Lives that stayed comfortably unfinished. That thought is difficult to sit with. But maybe it should be. Because sometimes discomfort is mercy. Sometimes truth arrives not to shame you, but to wake you before it's too late. Imagine meeting the person you could have become. Not the version shaped by fear. Not the version that constantly settled. The version that honored every promise. Faced every challenge, learned every lesson, refused every excuse. Would that person recognize you, or would they quietly wonder why you stopped believing in them? That question has no easy answer, but it has the power to change everything. Because the greatest competition in your life has never been another human being. It has always been the distance between who you are today and who you're capable of becoming. Close that distance, and your world begins to change. Ignore it, and no amount of comfort will ever bring peace. Deep inside, you already know this. That's why certain moments leave you restless. Why success stories inspire you and disturb you at the same time. Why you sometimes feel a strange sadness after watching someone else achieve what you once dreamed of. It isn't jealousy. It's recognition. A reminder from your own soul that the life you've been postponing is still waiting. Waiting patiently. Waiting silently. But it will not wait forever, because every sunrise makes a quiet promise. It offers another chance, and at the exact same time, it takes one away. Every morning, life places two invisible gifts into your hands. One is time. The other is choice. Most people spend the first without thinking about the second, and that is where the slow tragedy begins. You don't lose your future in a single catastrophic mistake. You lose it in ordinary moments that seem too small to matter. The alarm rings, and you negotiate with your ambition. An opportunity appears, and fear disguises itself as logic. A difficult conversation needs to happen, but silence feels safer than honesty. One by one, these moments slip away unnoticed. Yet each one quietly shapes the person you'll become. Destiny isn't built during rare moments of inspiration. It's built in the decisions no one else ever sees. The mind has an incredible ability to protect you. Unfortunately, it also has an incredible ability to deceive you. It tells you that avoiding discomfort is wisdom. It convinces you that playing small is being realistic. It whispers that failure would be unbearable, so it's better not to try at all. At first, those thoughts feel reasonable. They even sound responsible. But over time, you realize they were never protecting your future. They were protecting your fears. And fear has a remarkable talent for disguising itself as common sense. Think about how often you've said these words. I'll start when I have more confidence. I'll do it when the timing is better. I just need one more opportunity. It sounds harmless, but confidence is rarely the beginning of action. Confidence is almost always the reward for action. The person you admire didn't wake up fearless one morning. They became fearless because they kept moving while fear walked beside them. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's the decision that something else matters more. Every meaningful achievement in history was created by someone who acted before they felt completely ready. This is why waiting can become one of the most dangerous habits in life. Waiting feels productive because it gives the illusion of preparation. But many people spend years preparing for a life they never actually begin. They collect information instead of experience. They perfect plans instead of taking imperfect action. They convince themselves that tomorrow will magically provide the certainty that today refuses to give. Yet, tomorrow arrives looking exactly like today because the person making the decisions never changed. There comes a moment when you must stop asking whether the path is guaranteed and start asking whether staying where you are is acceptable. Those are very different questions. One is driven by fear, the other is driven by purpose. Purpose doesn't promise an easy journey, it promises a meaningful one. And meaning has always been more valuable than comfort. Comfort can entertain you for a season. Purpose can sustain you through a lifetime. Look closely at the people who seem truly fulfilled. It isn't because their lives are free from struggle. It's because their struggles serve something bigger than themselves. They know why they wake up. They know what they're building. They know which values they refuse to compromise. That clarity becomes a source of strength when circumstances become difficult. Without purpose, even small obstacles feel overwhelming. With purpose, enormous obstacles become challenges worth facing. The world will constantly try to sell you distractions, not because distractions are evil, but because attention has become one of the most valuable resources on earth. Every hour someone captures your attention without improving your life is an hour that can never be returned. Imagine treating your attention the way a wise investor treats money. You wouldn't hand your savings to every stranger who asked. Yet many people hand over their focus to anything that flashes, trends, or entertains. Slowly, they become experts in everyone else's lives while remaining strangers to their own potential. And then comes one of the most painful realizations a person can experience. You wake up one day and discover you've been surviving instead of living. Your calendar is full. Your mind is exhausted. Your schedule is crowded. But your spirit feels empty. Because activity is not the same as progress. Being busy is not the same as building. Movement is not the same as direction. You can run all day on a treadmill and still never leave the room. Life works the same way. The question isn't whether you're working hard. The question is whether your effort is moving you toward the life you actually want. There's another truth that very few people are willing to accept. Every excuse has a hidden reward. If excuses gave us nothing, we would abandon them immediately. An excuse protects you from rejection. It protects you from embarrassment. It protects you from temporary failure. But it also protects you from growth. And eventually, the price becomes unbearable. Because every excuse that saves you from today's discomfort quietly steals tomorrow's possibilities. One day, you begin wondering where your confidence went, where your excitement disappeared, where your dreams quietly faded. The answer is almost never found in one dramatic event. It's found in the countless moments when comfort defeated courage. That realization can hurt, but pain has a purpose. Pain is often life's way of pointing toward the place where transformation must begin. Imagine a sculptor standing before a massive block of stone. To everyone else, it's just rock, heavy, ordinary, lifeless. But the sculptor sees something invisible. a masterpiece waiting to be revealed. The difference isn't in the stone. It's in the vision. Your life is much the same. Most people see only your current circumstances, your limitations, your mistakes, your past, but those things are not your identity. They are simply the raw material from which your future can be shaped. Every challenge you survived gave you something, not just scars, perspective, not just pain, wisdom, not just disappointment, resilience. The experiences you once wished had never happened may become the very foundation of the person you're meant to become. That's one of life's greatest paradoxes. The moments that nearly break you often become the moments that build you. Not because suffering is beautiful, but because growth demands honesty. And suffering has a way of stripping away illusions. It forces you to confront what truly matters. It reveals which relationships strengthen your spirit and which slowly drain it. It exposes habits that once felt harmless but quietly stole your future. Most importantly, it introduces you to yourself. The version of you that exists beneath appearances, beneath expectations, beneath fear. That person has been waiting patiently, not for the perfect opportunity, not for someone else's permission, but for one decision. One honest decision to stop living as the person you've been and begin becoming the person you were always capable of being. Because in the end, your greatest regret will never be the risks you took with courage. It will be the life you could have lived. If only you had believed that your future was worth fighting for. There comes a moment in every meaningful life when the excuses become too heavy to carry. Not because they suddenly stop making sense, but because you finally realize they've been costing you far more than they've ever protected you. It's a quiet moment. No applause, no dramatic music. No one notices except you. Yet everything begins to change from that single decision, because the most powerful transformations rarely happen in public. They happen in silence, when a person looks honestly at the life they've been living and whispers, "I can't keep becoming someone I'll eventually regret." That sentence may never be spoken aloud. But if you've ever felt it, you know how deeply it echoes. It's the moment when your future finally speaks louder than your comfort. And that is where real freedom begins. Freedom isn't doing whatever you feel like doing. That's impulse. Freedom is having the strength to do what matters, even when you don't feel like it. The person who cannot control their own choices will eventually be controlled by their circumstances. Every undisciplined habit silently hands over another piece of your future. Every disciplined action quietly takes it back. The battle has never been between you and the world. It has always been between the version of you seeking immediate pleasure and the version of you building a meaningful life. Every single day, those two versions wake up together. One says, "You've done enough." The other says, "You're capable of more." One searches for reasons. The other searches for responsibility. One measures life by comfort. The other measures it by growth. Whichever voice you feed becomes the architect of your future. This is why character matters so much. Long before success becomes visible to the world, character is being built where no one is watching. It's revealed in the promises you keep, when nobody would know if you broke them. It's revealed in how you respond after failure, how you speak when you're frustrated, how you treat people who cannot benefit your ambitions. Character isn't something you display once you've succeeded. It's the reason success can be trusted in your hands. Many people spend years trying to change their circumstances. Very few spend that same energy changing themselves. Yet circumstances often reflect identity. A person who becomes more disciplined begins creating different opportunities. A person who becomes more courageous starts seeing possibilities they once overlooked. A person who becomes more grateful discovers abundance where they previously saw only lack. The outside world often changes because the inner world changed first. Think of a river cutting through solid rock. It doesn't possess explosive force. It possesses consistency. Day after day, season after season, year after year, its power comes not from intensity but persistence. Human greatness follows the same law. You don't have to become extraordinary overnight. You simply have to refuse giving up on becoming better today than you were yesterday. That sounds simple, but simplicity should never be mistaken for ease. Consistency is difficult because it asks you to remain faithful long before you see visible results. It demands effort during seasons when nobody applauds. It asks you to believe in seeds that haven't yet broken through the soil. Many people quit because they mistake invisible progress for the absence of progress. Nature never makes that mistake. A bamboo seed may appear unchanged for years. Beneath the surface, however, it is building an invisible network of roots strong enough to support incredible growth. Then, almost suddenly, it rises with astonishing speed. To those who only notice the visible results, success appears overnight. But the miracle was never sudden, it was simply hidden. Perhaps that's where you are right now. Building roots nobody else can see, learning lessons no one applauds, fighting battles no one understands. If so, don't confuse hidden growth with wasted effort. Some of the most important work you'll ever do will remain invisible until the moment it becomes undeniable. There is another trap that quietly steals remarkable lives. The belief that you must become perfect before becoming valuable. Perfection is one of fear's favorite disguises. It convinces talented people not to create. It convinces kind people not to speak. It convinces leaders not to lead. It whispers, wait until you're flawless. But life has never rewarded flawless people. It rewards faithful people. People willing to begin while they're still learning. People willing to improve while making mistakes. People humble enough to grow and courageous enough to continue. Every masterpiece once looked unfinished. Every expert once felt inexperienced. Every confident voice once trembled with uncertainty. The difference wasn't talent alone. It was perseverance. The willingness to continue after enthusiasm faded. Because motivation is beautiful, but it is unreliable. Some mornings you will wake up inspired. Other mornings you won't. If your future depends on how inspired you feel, your future will remain fragile. Discipline carries you where motivation cannot. Purpose keeps you moving when emotions become unpredictable. Commitment allows you to cross valleys that excitement alone could never survive. And somewhere along this journey, something remarkable begins happening. You stop chasing success merely to prove something to others. You stop measuring your worth by applause. You stop comparing your chapter 3 to someone else's chapter 20. Instead, you begin competing with yesterday's version of yourself. That changes everything. Because peace enters the life of the person who finally understands this truth. Your greatest responsibility is not impressing the world. It's honoring the potential you've been entrusted with. No one else can do that work for you. No mentor can replace your choices. No book can substitute your discipline. No opportunity can overcome your unwillingness to act. The responsibility feels heavy, but hidden inside responsibility is dignity. Because responsibility reminds you that your future is still being written. Your story is not trapped inside your past. Every sunrise hands you another blank page. The question is no longer whether yesterday was unfair. The question is what you'll write today. One decision, one conversation, one courageous step, one disciplined habit. Lives don't usually change because of one giant breakthrough. They change because ordinary moments begin pointing in a new direction. Imagine looking back 10 years from now. Will you remember today as another ordinary day? Or will you remember it as the day you finally stopped negotiating with your own potential? Because history rarely remembers the moment someone thought about changing. It remembers the moment they finally did. And perhaps, without fully realizing it, that moment has already begun. One day, without warning, you'll look back. Not at the money you almost earned. Not at the opportunities you almost accepted. Not at the dreams you almost pursued. You'll look back at the person you became, through every decision you made when no one else was watching. And in that moment, one question will rise above every other thought. Hest, did I truly live, or did I simply exist? Hest, that question has nothing to do with your age. It has nothing to do with where you were born, how much money you had, or how many advantages life gave someone else. It has everything to do with whether you had the courage to become the person you were capable of becoming. Because life was never asking you to compete with the entire world. It was asking you to be faithful with the life that was placed in your hands. Some people spend decades chasing a finish line that keeps moving. They believe happiness is waiting in the next achievement, the next promotion, the next relationship, the next possession. They keep saying, once I get there, I'll finally feel complete. But every destination creates another destination. Every mountain reveals another mountain. And if your peace depends entirely on reaching the next milestone, you'll spend your whole life running without ever arriving. Real fulfillment begins somewhere else. It begins the moment your actions become aligned with your values. When the person you are in private finally matches the person you hope to become in public. When your daily habits begin reflecting your deepest beliefs. When your choices stop being driven by fear and start being guided by purpose. That kind of peace cannot be purchased. It cannot be borrowed. It cannot be given to you by another person. It is earned through quiet integrity, through the countless unseen decisions that slowly shape an extraordinary life. There will still be difficult seasons. There will still be disappointment. People will misunderstand you. Some plans will fail. Certain doors will close no matter how sincerely you knocked. But you'll discover something that failure can never take away: self-respect. Because there is a unique confidence that belongs only to the person who knows they gave life everything they had, not perfection. Everything. And those are two very different things. Perfection keeps score. Purpose keeps moving. Perfection fears mistakes. Purpose learns from them. Perfection waits for certainty. Purpose takes the next faithful step. As the years pass, you'll begin noticing something beautiful. The habits that once felt impossible become natural. The discipline that once required constant effort becomes part of your identity. The fears that once controlled your choices lose their authority. Not because life became easier, but because you became stronger. You no longer need constant motivation. You no longer need everyone to believe in you. You no longer need perfect conditions before taking action. You've learned one of life's greatest lessons. Your future is built by consistency far more than intensity. And then, one ordinary morning, you'll notice something almost impossible to describe. The person staring back at you in the mirror feels different, not because your face has changed, but because your eyes have. There's a quiet confidence where doubt once lived, a calm determination where anxiety once ruled, a sense of purpose where confusion once lingered. You realize you are no longer trying to become someone else. You are finally becoming yourself, the person who is hidden beneath years of hesitation, the person who survived disappointment without allowing it to define them, the person who stopped waiting for permission, the person who discovered that courage is not a feeling. It's a decision made over and over again. That is the real victory. Not applause, not fame, not wealth alone. Those things may come, or they may not. But the greatest reward is waking up each morning without needing to escape your own life, knowing that even if the journey is still unfinished, you're walking in the right direction. There's something deeply powerful about that kind of life. It inspires without speaking. It leads without demanding attention. It leaves a legacy that cannot be measured only in achievements, but in the lives it touches. Because every person who chooses discipline over excuses gives someone else permission to do the same. Every person who chooses hope over resignation becomes proof that change is possible. Every person who refuses to waste their life becomes a light for those still searching for their own path. Maybe that's why these words found you today. Not by accident, but because somewhere beneath the noise of everyday life, a quiet part of you was ready to listen. Ready to stop surviving. Ready to stop postponing. Ready to stop making peace with a life that no longer reflects your potential. If that part of you is awake now, don't let this become another moment of inspiration that fades by tomorrow morning. Carry it with you, protect it, feed it through your actions, because inspiration may open the door, but only action allows you to walk through it. Years from now, you'll either thank the person you chose to become, or you'll wonder why you waited so long. The choice has always been yours. It still is. And perhaps the most beautiful truth of all is this: as long as you're breathing, your story is not finished. The chapter you've been afraid to write can still begin. The dream you've neglected can still be revived. The habits you've allowed to control you can still be replaced. The future you've imagined can still become reality. Not because life suddenly becomes fair, but because you finally become intentional. So when you finish listening to these words, don't close this moment as if it were just another video. Close it as the ending of an old version of yourself. Stand up. Take one meaningful step. Keep the promise you've been breaking. Make the phone call. Write the first page. Start the business. Open the book. Have the difficult conversation. Wake up earlier. Forgive. Learn. Build. Grow. Not because it's easy, but because your life is too valuable to spend waiting for a version of yourself that only exists in your imagination. Become that person, starting today. If this message spoke to something you've been carrying in silence, don't let it stay with you alone. Share it with someone who may need this reminder, because one honest conversation can change the direction of a life. And if you're committed to becoming stronger, wiser, and more intentional with every passing day, subscribe and join this journey. There are many more conversations ahead, conversations that challenge the mind, strengthen the spirit, and remind you of the incredible potential that still lives within you. Until we meet again, remember this. The greatest investment you will ever make is not in the world around you. It is in the person you choose to become, and that decision begins now.